The moment she said she needed a husband by tomorrow, the air seemed to freeze, as if the quiet road between cornfields and old barns had suddenly become the center of the universe. It was the kind of sentence that changed the direction of a life without warning, the kind that arrived heavy with desperation and hope all at once. Nothing dramatic happened in that instant. No thunder, no sirens, yet something irreversible shifted, because some requests are not really requests at all. They are confessions wrapped in urgency, and this one carried the weight of a woman standing at the edge of losing everything she loved. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a moment and connect with this moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing the right thing when it matters most, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that are still waiting to believe again. The man standing across from her was named Matthew Collins, a 34-year-old mechanic who had returned to rural Iowa after a failed attempt at city life. He had come back to care for his late father's small farmhouse, surrounded by grazing land and memories that never quite left him alone. His days were predictable and honest, filled with grease-stained hands and evenings that ended too early. He had learned how to live quietly, how to avoid wanting too much. The woman before him, however, made quiet feel impossible. Her name was Rebecca Hale, and she carried herself with a strength that looked practiced, as though life had tested her often, and she had survived by refusing to fall apart in public. Rebecca had arrived in town only 6 months earlier, inheriting her grandparents' struggling dairy farm on the outskirts of Cedar Ridge. The land meant everything to her. It was the last tangible connection to a childhood spent running barefoot through fields, to a grandmother who taught her faith through action, and to a promise she had made at a hospital bedside, that she would never let the farm be sold. What the town didn't know was that the bank was closing in fast, and the final condition for saving the property involved a clause so outdated it felt unreal. A family trust tied to the land required a married owner for renewal, a rule written decades earlier to ensure stability. Rebecca had fought it legally, emotionally, spiritually, and lost every time. She had one day left. Matthew knew her only in fragments, brief exchanges at the local diner, polite nods at church, a shared silence when her truck broke down on the county road, and he had helped tow it back. He had seen the exhaustion behind her eyes long before she spoke the words that changed everything. He understood desperation because it lived in him too, though his wore a quieter face. He had lost his fiancée years earlier to a sudden illness and had sealed that part of himself away, believing that some doors were meant to stay closed. The idea that followed her confession was not romantic or brave, it was practical and terrifying. Matthew had space, stability, and a reputation in town that still meant something. Living under the same roof could make the arrangement believable, at least long enough to satisfy the paperwork and buy her time. It was not a proposal born of love, but of necessity and a shared understanding of loss. Both of them knew the risks. Small towns see everything. Hearts, however, see even more. The first night under the same roof was heavy with uncertainty. The farmhouse creaked as if aware of the strange pact forming within its walls. Rebecca unpacked quietly, placing framed photos of her grandparents beside Matthew's old family Bible on the mantel, creating a blend of histories that felt both wrong and inevitable. They moved around each other carefully, respectful and distant, each guarding private pain. Faith lingered between them like a fragile thread, unspoken but present in every small act of kindness. Days turned into weeks, and the arrangement began to blur at the edges. Matthew noticed how Rebecca prayed softly before sunrise, asking for strength she never admitted she needed. Rebecca noticed how Matthew fixed things without being asked, not just broken machines, but moments, silences, and her growing sense of isolation. The town noticed too. Whispers followed them into the grocery store, but so did unexpected warmth. People brought casseroles, offered congratulations, and spoke blessings without knowing the truth. Each kindness felt undeserved and yet deeply healing. The real challenge was not convincing others, but convincing themselves. Old wounds surfaced in the quiet moments. Matthew struggled with guilt. feeling as though he was betraying a love he had lost by opening his home again. Rebecca struggled with fear, knowing that the safety she felt was borrowed time, built on a promise she could not guarantee would last. Yet in the shared routines of morning coffee, evening chores, and Sunday drives past open fields, something genuine began to take root. Not passion, but trust. Not fantasy, but companionship. Trouble arrived when the bank sent an inspector earlier than expected. The scrutiny was intense, every detail examined, every inconsistency magnified. Rebecca nearly unraveled under the pressure, her faith shaken by the possibility of failure despite all she had endured. It was Matthew's quiet presence that steadied her, reminding her through actions rather than words that she was not standing alone. The inspector left satisfied, and the farm was granted an extension that felt like a miracle. With the immediate crisis over, reality returned in full force. The agreement had been meant to be temporary. Both of them knew that. Yet the thought of returning to separate lives felt heavier than either expected. Rebecca had begun to laugh again, a sound that filled rooms and healed places she had forgotten were broken. Matthew had begun to hope, a dangerous thing he had sworn off years ago. Their faith, once cautious, now felt active, alive in the way they cared for one another without expectation. As seasons changed, so did they. The land recovered, the farm stabilized, and the town accepted them not as a story but as part of its rhythm. Matthew found himself repairing more than engines, investing in the farm's future with a dedication that surprised him. Rebecca found herself planning beyond survival, dreaming again, trusting that God's timing, though painful, was never careless. Just before the ending of this story, take a moment to comment below and share what you believe makes a relationship real: love, sacrifice, faith, or timing. Your thoughts matter more than you know. The day the final paperwork arrived, releasing Rebecca from the requirement that had started it all, felt strangely quiet. There was no celebration, only a shared understanding that the choice ahead was now real. Nothing forced them to stay, nothing required them to leave. What had begun as an act of kindness had grown into something deeper, something earned through patience and grace. They chose each other not because they had to, but because life together had become richer, steadier, and filled with purpose. Near the end of this journey, as the sun set behind the fields and the farmhouse glowed with warm light, Matthew and Rebecca stood side by side, aware that love does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it enters through service, through shared burdens, through the courage to open a door when someone knocks in desperation. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that hope often comes disguised as inconvenience, please like this video, share it, and leave a heartfelt comment. Your engagement helps keep stories of faith, kindness, and second chances alive for those who need them most. In the end, the husband she needed by tomorrow became the partner she never expected, and the place she feared losing became the foundation for a life rebuilt not on obligation, but on grace.